Good morning.
Thank you.
All right.
Howdy, all.
Good morning. So today we have an interesting agenda, and one that's we're going to welcome both City Manager Mike Malinoff as well as the mayor a little bit later on, and I really appreciate it. Mike, particularly coming on, particularly since you haven't been feeling so great. We do appreciate your time. The I do want to call the meeting to order quickly. Trish, do you want to call the roll?
Sure. Chairman Paul Rankin,
Here.
Barbara Chenault,
Present.
Sienna Scott,
Here.
Faye Curry,
Here.
Stuart Cohen.
Yep.
And Brandon Wright.
Here.
Excellent.
We got Faye and Sienna as well.
I called them.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think let me just do a quick intro. I think everybody understands that the purpose of the commission, obviously, is to take a look at compensation for alderpersons, city manager, as well as mayor, and to make recommendations to the city council based on our discussions with them and, of course, amongst ourselves. This is forward-looking, as you know. That is, we're not talking about current compensation other than as a way to look at what we might want to recommend as compensation for those individuals going forward. Mike, we've had the pleasure already to chat with, not live, but to chat with each of the alderpersons, I think, except one so far. So we've had a bit of their input. But we really want to talk to you today about your position, how you see it, and obviously to get your views on compensation issues going forward. I think, and I'll just throw this out to everybody on the commission. I mean, my sense was maybe we'd give Mike a chance just to offer a brief introduction, talk a little bit about sort of the scope of his responsibilities and his job, and then throw it open to questions. Does that sound like a reasonable approach? Yeah, all good? Okay. Well, Mike, welcome. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Maybe we could just toss it over to you. I think everybody among us here is interested in hearing what you had to say, a lot about what you had to say about the scope of your responsibilities in particular, because your position here in the city is crucial, and we want to get a sense of how you see it, not just today, but going forward. So
thank you, and thank you for having me. And just by way of background, I am a member of the International City County Management Association, which is a professional association of most professional city managers. And I've been a member of that for over 30 years. I'd recommend them as a good resource for you too. They do salary and compensation studies, and they're a good resource and a good tool. Traditionally, they do it by regions and size of communities, and it would give you, I think, some pretty good comparative data. As far as a little bit more of my background, I've done this kind of work in 3 different communities. Newport, you mentioned, Charles County, Maryland, and Annapolis. Each of the communities structured it somewhat differently. Newport was a more traditional by charter council manager form, where the mayor was chosen by the body, not the voters, and had limited daily authority. The city manager hired, supervised, fired directors, and prepared the budget, and was the lack of a better word, the director of public safety as well. The nuance of that is every community is a little bit different. In the first day or week I came there, one of the former mayors came in the office and said, "This may all be well and good, but we know how to count to five. And that's how things are done around here. And so there was always kind of a push and pull associated with that. And I can say, although the community had a very structured and formalized structure for the city manager, it wasn't always run that way. And a lot of that has to do with who you hire and who's on the council. Charles County, and this is kind of leading up to Annapolis, if you don't mind. In Charles County, restructured the authority of the county administrative officer. When I came, the commissioners at the time wanted the county administrator to have more authority for hiring and firing and so on. So basically structured it similar to the traditional council manager form. They were trying to get away, that group, from what they thought was a government run a little bit too much cronyism and lack of professionalism. And so it ran pretty smoothly that way for the period of time that I was there. And then coming to Annapolis, I've been here for 3 different tenures. And it's changed somewhat over the years. At first, it was a city administrator function, which really was as much authority or not as the mayor and council wanted to give on a daily basis. And that was often very difficult, particularly because you never quite understood your authority. And if you did something, be it good, bad, or indifferent, whether it had to do with the budget or supervising directors, that could, the rug could be pulled from under you depending on who it was. And that was in part why I left to go to Newport, Rhode Island. I came back under several years later, started back as a director, didn't want to be a city manager at the time, had young kids. It's a difficult job to raise a family. And but there was a crisis that occurred when Josh Cohn was elected, having to do with the budget, and a lot of directors' positions weren't filled. They had hired someone for the position that wasn't had any background in local government and was perhaps without portfolio. And that kind of leads to the credentialing of your position, what you want to get in a city manager. And so anyway, the mayor and council reached out to me and asked if I'd step up for the position. We had to address some serious budgeting issues and hire, I think, about a half dozen directors at the time, and all of which I helped to lead. The position was strengthened a bit at the time, changed to title to city manager with a little more authority. And I was there until Mayor Panelides was elected, and left and went to the state and then to Charles County. I wasn't anticipating coming back, but David Jarrell, who was the city manager at the time, was sweet talking me into coming and helping. And I think that the circumstances were such around COVID that they were looking for some help in trying to stabilize the directors and create a little bit more harmony between the council and the professional staff. And we worked real hard at that. I didn't anticipate coming back, and frankly, I don't anticipate staying. I'm at a point in my life where I have other things I want to do. But by way of expressing and giving you examples of what I do, and what you should do as a city manager, is we went out and had to hire a few directors, some internally, some externally, but we did, I think, a good job in stabilizing the directors' positions and not having the turnover and frankly some of the hostility between the directors and the council. The other thing that we created and did was a retreat with the directors and what we call the leadership team, but also the mayor and council, and then the mayor, council, and leadership team. And the whole idea was to try to create a better understanding and dialogue between people on what expectations were and also who they were as people. So it's a little harder, for the most part, a little harder for people to have hostilities when they get to know people a little bit better and personally. And I think those were generally successful in creating a better environment for everyone involved. In fact, the woman who was our facilitator for our two council and leadership team retreats is now the CEO of ICMA. She was just hired for that position about a week ago, and outstanding individual. I was shocked when I heard she wanted it or was hired. I didn't know that she did, and she's around my age, and I was thinking it's challenging times, and local government right now is it's going to be an interesting time. But she was fantastic in bringing us together and creating, I think, which is a better understanding among the leadership team and the mayor and council. The other things that beyond the hiring and recommendations and supervision of the directors is oversight in the operations of the budget. Clearly, there's a finance director, budget officer, and the like, but that is a primary role of the city manager and assistant city manager, and having the skill set to be able to sit down in those meetings and understand the balance of that and getting it through to adoption by the council is a primary function of the job, and as well as creating and helping oversee a process of making sure the monies are spent in the appropriate manner. I mean, occasionally things happen where people want to do something that isn't budgeted, and there are examples that I could give, but I don't need to, is where I'd say, no, you can't do that. We need to go before the council, get approval, go through the budgeting process, and then move on from there, because we can't do things by fiat. It's not, we're kind of a hybrid government. It's not necessarily a strong mayor or a council manager where people can kind of force their way through. So you have to follow the law and follow the code, and that's the thing that I try to stress. Beyond that, it's just general operational background and knowledge and what you bring to the table. That's kind of an overview of what I do and how I got here.
Thanks. I appreciate that, by the way. Before we go to questions, just a couple exercise my prerogative, I guess. About how large is the city budget, and about how many people?
It's over 100 million in the operating budget, and it's there's several hundred million in the capital budget. So you have different components. You have your general fund, your enterprise funds, and that all combines into your operating budget, which is over 100 million. Something, frankly, in about 100.5 million. And then you have your capital budget, which is in the hundreds of millions, but that's spread out over a period of time. And that's another element of the budget. So you really have three components of it that are rolled up into the one.
And about how many individuals are working for the city?
Patricia would know better, but I'd say 600 to 700 full-time, and then you have a variety of seasonal.
Yeah, we have about 524 positions and that are full-time. And then it fluctuates a lot with summer in terms of part-time help. So that's somewhere 250 to 300 there.
Thank you. And lastly, do all of those positions, with the exception of the mayor, obviously, report to you, Mike?
No, the law office doesn't.
The law.
And they all report to the directors who report to me, except the Office of Law and the mayor's office. They're
Great.
all separate. The
Thanks.
Office of Law is interesting because it comes up from time to time from the council, whether it should or shouldn't. In Charles, they changed it to reporting to the county administrative officer. In Newport, it reported to the mayor and council.
Thank you. I'd like to go ahead and open it up for questions. Just either raise your hand or shout out or whatever. Sienna, do you have, I want to start with you. Do you have any questions for Mike?
I'll pass and
No
reserve
problem.
the right to come back to
Nah.
me.
No problem. Faye, do you have some questions?
Thank you very much, Mike. It's nice to see you. I was on the commission years ago with you, and you're always full of great knowledge to help and understand. And I want to
Thank you.
personally thank you for coming back to interject in this process with us and do what you do in the city. My thing is, since you know the historical knowledge, and now, are there any particular areas that you see significantly need to be enhanced?
Well,
role?
I mean, you're looking at one area, and we're actually going through that through the whole city right now with class and compensation that we're trying to get through the council. And that's a big area, and you're addressing a particular area of it because I think as you're making your review and the council's reviewing what we're presenting to them, it's important that you keep current and you're able to retain and attract good professional staff in a region that I've seen over the years come from a small, kind of tied to the shore community to Washington D.C. suburb of a lot of money, and it creates a cost of living issues and the like. And the other thing is, from time to time, I think the structure of the government, whether the hybrid that we have is exactly what you want or not. It's at times, I think, whether wittingly or not, designed to create checks and balances, and otherwise, sometimes there's been a discussion in the before the council on whether you go to a full council manager or not. That's my preference, but the hybrid we have right now creates some checks and balances.
Thank you.
Faye, any follow-up to that, or should we keep on going here?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you for that.
Yeah, sure. Brandon, any questions, Mr. Malinoff?
No questions for me. Thank you.
Barbara?
Not at this time.
Stu?
Thank you, and thank you, Mike, for your service and for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm going to make an assumption that your position or your workload is not a 40-hour work week.
No, I mean, it really is I'm on the computer when I first wake up in the morning, and I'm on my phone until I go to bed at night. So really it can be all the time, 7 days a week, or you can create some boundaries physically. But you're right. I always remember when I first came back and David Jarrell was the city manager, and I was on the computer on a Saturday morning, and he sent me an email, and so I said, you do what I do, and that's try to stay ahead of the curve. So yes.
And it seems to me that this is sort of unique that this commission is reviewing your salary or proposing the future salary for your position. Let's put it that way. From your experience, both in the other positions and on the international commission, I see whatever. Is that real unique?
Yes. Trisha and I have talked about this. In fact, I think she even was wondering whether it would come up today. No, it generally is not done this way. I mean, there's a salary range that's structured probably more through the class and compensation study that we're doing right now, which is you base it on the job function, but also what's going on in the region, and then have that negotiated with the mayor and council.
And you, I may have misunderstood you. You indicated that you're not going to want to continue in this position for the rest of your life. Is that
Well, if you asked me that in December when I was going through what I was going through, I would probably say, yeah, I am going through the rest of my life, shorter than I had anticipated. But no, I'm not. I mean, I really love the city and I love the people, and in fact, want to get back next week just to start working and be around people and do what I love. But there's only so much you can do. And I think one of the things, and I was thinking about what you're doing here, is to set the salary at an appropriate range to attract in some and retain some good talent going forward, which I think is out there. It's an attractive city. It just, it can be a challenging place, but that doesn't necessarily deter people from coming, as long as they feel like they have a chance and it's safe and they're adequately compensated.
so? I'm going to ask you directly, but I'm just going to make the assumption that any salary that's adopted by the city council this year may or may not, really probably won't affect you for the long term. Is that?
No, I don't think so. I think one thing, though, to keep in mind while you're going through this, and it's not in the context of your question, is to make sure that the city manager has a salary, doesn't have to be a lot, but is higher than the people they supervise.
So then I'm going to put you on the spot to tell us a figure that you believe would be an appropriate figure, or I'm assuming there's going to be a salary range if the work being done on compensation is adopted and the city manager gets moved to an E6. But assuming it, for the purposes of this question, assume it doesn't get through, what would be an appropriate salary for a city manager of Annapolis?
I think I'll give you a comparison, and then I'll go to the class and compensation study. The comparison was brought up earlier is Newport, Rhode Island. They just hired somebody at $225,000, which is $25,000 more than the top of what we pay, and Newport's 2/3 our size. Beautiful place, but it has about 8,000 people. Complex for sure, but during the winter it's crickets. During the winter in Annapolis, you have the session, it's active year round. And the class and compensation study had it north of $250,000. I forget the exact range, but Tricia can provide you that. I think from what I know of my colleagues in the region, the professional staff, professional colleagues, that would be the range that I would think you would want to have it, so that you would be able to retain and attract and retain a good quality person.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think I'm interpreting that to be somewhere 225 to 250.
I would say north of 250, because that's what the class and compensation study, I'm giving you a comparison with Newport, saying in Newport, a smaller city, just hired somebody at 225. And our class and compensation study in our region, comparing our salaries and our size and our complexity, I would say north of 250. And one of the interesting things that came up, Stuart, and with some of the council when we were going through the class and compensation study, is comparing us to other cities in the state. We are a full service city, except for wastewater treatment. And many of the communities in the DC area, you may have the manager making more, but a lot of the functions are with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, which is a regional authority. And then you also have WSSC, which is a regional water authority, water and sewer authority. And then you have sometimes they don't have their own policing force. They use the counties. So that's the other thing you have to keep in mind is the diverse and complex nature of our operations as it compares to other governments. So I would say north of 250, which is what the compensation study did. Newport's was 225. And again, their city is 1/3 less population than we are.
Okay, let me just ask one final question at this point. Since you've referred to the hiring in Newport, can you tell us the experience level of the person they hired?
Well, funny you should ask. It was very controversial there, and this is actually a lesson to be learned going forward. They didn't use a headhunter and they just used a general search. And it's a community that has a reputation of turning over managers and being very political. So they ended up hiring somebody who has a vast amount of experience on the military base. He was a former military person who ran one of the operations in base there. And there is a lot of controversy as to whether or not he has the credentials and qualifications to do the job. And you know, that is something that you got to keep in mind, although you're in compensation, is it is a profession, and if you hire people that have that background knowledge, although every community is a little bit different, they come to the table with a skill set not unlike your police and fire and public works and planning and so on, HR, where they can come and bring knowledge and experience that is applicable. When you hire somebody that doesn't have that background, there's a learning curve. They certainly bring certain skills to the table, but you want to make sure you hire somebody that has that background and skill set.
So my understanding is the city code lays out job requirements for your position?
Requirements and background education generally. Yeah.
Thank you much.
You're
Right.
welcome.
And thank you for continuing to do the job.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thanks, Stu. Faye, go ahead.
Mike, I remember before in a previous commission, you told what was entailed in getting that certification that you had, that qualification. You may want to share with this group it's no small feat from what I recall.
Right. No, it's you're a credentialed city manager, and I've had that for many years. It's a process that the association created probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago, where you had to take a test and you are reviewed, and you have a certain amount of continuing education, CREs, that you have to have every year to maintain it. And then being a part of the association too. I've been on their board for what they call their Global Engagement Committee for several iterations too. And it's really helpful when you have that kind of credentialing and experience and involvement, because you network with so many of your colleagues and you see what's going on in this country as well as abroad, and it brings a lot of perspective, I think.
Faye, do you have any follow-up for that?
No, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Others? I have, if not, and just raise your hand. Oh, go ahead. Sienna, go ahead.
Mike, I just have a few questions. How many directors report to you?
11.
And
And we're kind of going through a debate on that right now, because Tricia is a chief and she's being looked at to be created back to being a director. I'm sorry, Tricia, using your name, the HR position, and to be HR director. And then you also have the IT position as a chief that reports directly. They both would, but it's really supervised by the city manager as opposed to being a director level, and that's being reviewed too. And I think they'll both be created as department directors, which they were originally.
So that would bring it to 13.
What would be the total now, Tricia?
Well, we have,
Not including the Office of Law.
not including the Office of Law, we have 9.
Yeah, so it'd be
That would
11.
make it 11.
Yeah.
11, okay. And the deputy, I understand from one of the council persons, there are 2 deputy city managers.
Well, that's an interesting thing. The deputy city manager was created when I wasn't there, and that was for resiliency and given that title, but a specific task, which is resiliency and environmental. When I came, the position of assistant city manager was open, and I went before the council, and we worked vigorously to make sure that we made the position salary and the position itself more consistent with what an assistant or a deputy city manager should do, which is to be the subordinate of the city manager, but generally have a portfolio of their own and do work and be prepared to take over for the city manager, like when I'm out on medical. The way I envision it going forward, I would recommend is that, and I see it throughout the country, is if you have assistant city manager and you have 2, you could have one for environment and land use and public works, and another for administrative, like HR, budgeting, IT, and then their portfolio on a daily operational basis would be those departments. Right now, it's really the deputy is environmental and resiliency, and the assistant, the portfolio is generally over all the departments, but particularly with administration, HR, budgeting, and IT, which is frankly why I hired her, because she had a tremendous background in those areas, and it balanced me out. I tend to be a more of a overall person, interest in the weeds and certain things, but she came in with really specific drill down talents in those areas, and it's really worked out quite well, I think. I hope that I didn't go off too far on that, but the interesting discussion going forward, whoever the next mayor and council is, and I've recommended this to Jackie Gile, who's the deputy, and to Vicky, who's the assistant, and talked it over with Tricia, is the whole concept of those, deputy for this and deputy for that of the different departments. And I think it works quite well. And it is a model you see around the country.
Okay.
Anna, any follow-ups? Tiana, you good?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. Others? Thank you. A couple of questions. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, Stuart, go ahead.
Mike, before you leave, are you going to clean up permitting?
Well, I won't lie to you and say I didn't notice an article in the newspaper about a certain sandwich shop in town. I will say that we hired a really good director, Chris Jakubiak. He's come in, he's been a breath of fresh air, and we're working towards that. Part of it was this NeoGov software. We had to transition away from something called CityWorks, which I brought to the city back in 2003. And it wasn't supported, but it worked. It's crazy. It's like the software doesn't work because it won't be supported, so we have to get something else which isn't working as well. So to make a long story short, we're working on it, and I think Chris is the right person for it. He's really a good guy, and it, I don't mean that in that that's what it takes, but his skill set is fantastically suited towards being able to problem solve and bring us forward. We're a complex city, though. We have planning commissions, we have HPC. We have a lot of tools out there that people would not want to see go away that all play into the mixture. Just look at what's going on in City Dock.
I've noticed.
Yeah, you know, it's
Okay.
funny. Even one of my urologists said that was an appointment, and they're like, "So what's going on with the City Dock?" And I'm like, "All right, let's stick to the task at hand."
Thanks. Do others questions? A couple of questions from my end. We're talking or looking at this this sort of range, I guess, is from 225 to perhaps call it 300. Pick a number. That
And
also,
that's the range, not 225, but that's the range the class and compensation study has.
okay. Is that also the range that you think is reasonable?
I do.
Okay. And given that kind of a range, obviously, when one comes in and starts to look at people for these positions, you're looking also at qualifications.
Correct.
So are there metrics that are already sort of pre-published, or are there metrics that someone who might hire you, the next you, should look at?
Yeah, I mean, we have job description and we also have it in the code, but I think it could be looked at again and updated. I've looked at it fairly recently because I had to look at it for the class and compensation study, and also when I was hiring Vicki Buckland for the assistant position, and the new class and compensation job descriptions have updated it, but I think frankly, that's more a question of the code and how stringent the council wants to be on the qualifications. You see a lot of different people doing my job, but I think it's really important to get people that have, as Faye was kind of alluding to, the kind of background and training and interests that I have. I think it really makes a difference. And there are a lot of them out there. Vicki had that. Vicki Buckland has that background, and 20 years chief operating officer in Montgomery County in a department that's larger than our entire budget by many factors, but very active in ICMA and very interested in the human nature of our business, not just the technical. And that's kind of and it's evolved over the years. Early on, you might have had people with more of a public works background, and then kind of a finance background, and then more of a public administration background. I have public administration and law, so it kind of melds into it, but not to go on too long, but I think it's important that you focus in on people that have that kind of background. I really think it helps the community, the directors, and the council.
Thanks. The salary is one thing. The perks, if you want to call them that, are another. I'm not too sure what our remit is with regard to that, but we are at least looking at those kinds of questions with regard to the older persons. Are there things that on that side, if you will, on the perk side, that you think are extremely important or vital that we should consider?
And this is something that Tricia will have to educate us all on, and we've talked about a lot, but I think the big issue with a city manager is the tenure of city managers tend to be a little bit like police chiefs, maybe 5 years, give or take. And we're in the state retirement plan, and that's a 10-year vesting. But we're made to go into it. I have to contribute to it. And there was no chance that I was going to be another 10 years. So I'm contributing to it, but I'm also contributing to a 401 and a 457, and I can do that. But I think the idea would be to try to look at the deferred compensation ability for the city manager and the directors. Charles was a good area to look at, because they structured everybody with employment contracts and at least provided a retirement plan that is portable. portability of that is important. I mean, if you hire somebody who's, in the middle of their career and they aren't there for, if you think about it, you can have two administrations. It's only 8 years and they still won't invest in the state system. They can take what they contribute and roll it into something else, but it provides a little bit more security if they choose that. Give them the option.
The challenge
The other
with
thing,
that
and I
one-
know Tricia and I deal with that a lot, is when you have people who are relocating, and I don't think the city's ever particularly looked at that issue with much forward thinking, which is if you have people who are moving themselves and families in, some manner of relocation.
Tricia, you had a
Yeah, I just wanted to offer that our constraint around the pension system is a state decision. And so they made a change years ago, I can't remember the exact date, for elected officials to opt in or opt out of the retirement system, but not your chief executive officer, not department directors. And so when you have appointees that may be tied to administration decisions like actual governmental changes, a new mayor, for example, that doesn't allow us that kind of flexibility. We're what is considered a PGU, a public governmental unit. And as such, we don't really have the influence over major changes in the pension plan. It would require legislative action to make that change. And so it's not that we couldn't pursue it, but will we? And would we push for that? It'd probably be something that other PGUs would probably need to come together and do collectively in order to be successful through a legislative action.
Right. And that Tricia's point, she drove home to me when I came back, because I think that all was rectified the last few years. But the 401 and 457 and the ability to have that is here, but maybe could be strengthened.
Thank you. Just switching hats just a little bit. You report directly to the mayor, correctly?
Correct.
Great. And one of the things that we're looking at also is the mayoral salary. And I don't know whether you wish to or don't wish to comment on that. Please feel free to defer if you like. But,
It'll be best that I defer.
Okay. All right.
But I've seen it in different communities at different levels, and Charles was, I think, comparable, the president of the commission, to what this mayor is, and it was comparable.
Okay, thank you. And actually pushing it down one step further to the council members themselves, they're currently compensated around 18.5, and we're looking at them. Do you think that's a reasonable level of compensation from what you've seen around the country, or is that?
It's within the range for sure. And I looked in your questions, and you go down into benefits too. And I was here when they moved the option of getting medical benefits away from them. And I don't know that that's necessary or not, but you could look at that too. Some communities provide that and some do not. It was a benefit that the council had earlier in my tenure, but a particular council member was always going against it. And the other thing in looking at your questions is the time. I mean, some of them, they all work hard and put a lot of time and effort in, for sure. I think the idea is the position is supposed to be more of a part-time position, but some, particularly if they're retired, have put a lot of time in. And so I think that's kind of the balancing act that you have to have, is really what the true expectations of the position is across the board. And that's not to be there every day.
Appreciate that. Sienna, yeah.
Mike, can I follow up on that? With many of the older persons spoke to us about the need for staff to support their positions. Can you speak to your opinion on that?
Well, I think one of the advantages looking forward that we have is we have some additional office space that we're going to be moving some of our city hall people into, and it may free up some room for the council. Because right now, I don't know where we would put anybody additional for them. I can see that as shared. It certainly is something that you see was not existent in Newport at all, but in Charles, which isn't a big county. I mean, it's large in size in geography, but maybe 200,000 people now, where they had some staffing assistance. So, maybe not one for everyone, but a little bit more could be helpful. Again, though, not to get myself in trouble, but it's not meant to be a full-time position.
Appreciate that. Sienna, any follow-up?
No, thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Other questions for Mike? Got just a few minutes to go here. Tim?
I'd just like to offer to Mike that I've already provided the executive pay scale to them and the information from the class and comp study.
Right.
They could see what the market data was and what the consultants have put in their report.
Good. All right. Thank you. And I mean, that's an eye opener for the council because, as I alluded to earlier, I can remember coming when we were a little small place, but now we're in a big metropolitan area where there's a lot of competition for services, and it's great to be competitive.
Thank you. One last go around. Anyone have any other further questions for Mike before he leaves? Well, if not, then thank you for being so frank and for taking so much of your time. We really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. And thank you for engaging me in this. And I didn't quite know what to expect, but I think you all are asking the right questions. And I look forward to seeing what you decide.
Many thanks. You take
Thank
care.
you.
Feel better.
All right.
Hey, Mike.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See ya. Everybody stick around except for Mike. I think we're due to see the mayor in a few minutes. I think I think I actually saw him. Yeah, he's there somewhere. I'm sure he's not paying attention to every moment here, but so that was really interesting. That was really cool. I thought he was great. Anybody has some comments on what he had to say?
The position is underpaid currently.
Yeah, pretty clear. Pretty clear. He's 200, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and he's not paid. Yeah, and I think that was the comment by several, at least several of the council members. I talked to Ross the other day. I think I sent you a summary of what he had to say, but he was feeling like that was a position that was not as well paid as it should be either. So
I'd just like to offer too that if the commission sets the pay for this position, one of the comments I saw was being paid more than directors. As we go, my charge under the code is to do salary comparisons and benefit benchmarking to do market analysis. And so if this is set by the commission, it's a 4-year setting. And we're going to continue to do the work around what our directors paid, for example, and whether there needs to be any pay adjustments, any compensation adjustments in the salary ranges as a result of that kind of market analysis, which would not therefore touch this position in real time.
I'm not sure I followed what you just said. So you're doing, and I apologize, you're looking at area-wide comparisons. Is that what you're doing?
We would be expected to do salary analysis and get competitive benchmarking information to keep our pay ranges and our pay scales competitive with the market. The salary range set for the city manager through this process would be static in that regard, and so
You mean through
know
the,
that it would necessarily influence or fall within the market analysis would necessarily keep us within that range for 4 years. I don't know. It might.
you mean what our recommendation is for the city manager going forward for the, if adopted by the city council, right?
Right.
But we could do a recommendation of X dollars with an increase, annual increase over the 4 years, each built it into our recommendation.
Yes. I think the language in the code now was believing that by setting a range and then allowing for cost of living adjustments that may exceed that range was attempting to keep the pay range for, or the pay, actual pay for the city manager above the department heads.
Sure.
However, they're also entitled to merit increases within a salary range. So it's not just a cost of living increase that's impactful. It's movement for annual salary reviews that's part of that within the range change. So I'm suggesting that you really drill down more into the language as written if you intend to keep the city manager's pay set by the Salary Review Commission, so that we're accounting for more than just a cost of living increase. You're accounting for, it sounds like what I hear from Mike's offering today was that, and also from the comments I see from some of the council members, it's the goal of keeping the city manager's pay above the direct reports, which is a very standard and reasonable expectation in the compensation world.
But isn't that almost impossible for us? I mean, so let's just say, and I'm happy to be wrong, but so if we just said, oh, pay him $250, let's just for fun, pay him $250 going forward. So that would be, and the council adopts it, fine, with CPI increases. So, a 2% a year or something like that. But we have nothing to do with merit, right?
Right, but the code also provides for the room for the mayor to give a merit increase, but only up to the range spread, right?
So in other words,
So you kind of have two pieces of this language that don't quite jive.
Okay, so we would be better off, and again, this is totally hypothetical. We'd be better off saying, 225 to 265. And then leaving it there, or should we say 225 with CPI and merit increases, just to pick a number? So I'm a bit confused about how our recommendation would be effected.
Yeah.
Our recommendation is only a recommendation.
Right.
And it's only a recommendation. And I don't want to lead you in any particular way. I'm just trying to speak in hypotheticals here, because if the objective is to keep the city manager's pay such that he, she, they could receive performance-based increases, as well as keeping pace with pay range changes that occur with the direct reports, that could get us there. But it's like a crystal ball thing, right? We don't know what kind of impact future markets. I mean, a market may fall, maybe that there's no increases. It's flat for 4 years in for the rest of the city government, in the work that's necessarily done through my office to do so. It's no way to know that with a crystal ball, right? But there's also a very reasonable goal to make sure that a city manager with the talents that individual, I mean, why take on city management? Just become a department head, just why take on the larger role if it's not valued as the highest level responsible position in city government that's not elected, which is what it is.
You all can correct me if I'm wrong, but we've had a preliminary discussion, and I think we were mostly in agreement that part of our recommendation is the city manager should not be part of this process. going forward, that the city manager's salary should be removed and become part of the, whatever you call it in the city. Are people still feeling that way? Not that doesn't mean we don't make a recommendation as to what we think the salary should be, because that's our charge. We do have to come up with a proposed salary or a recommendation of a salary, but we don't have to say, we can say we don't like this process for XYZ reasons, many of which Trish just laid out.
Comments? And from what it's worth, my 2 cents, we're looking, I see both sides of it a little bit, Stu, at this point in time. I'm not sure what my opinion is at this point, but we're looking at elected officials effectively, except for one person. Is that sort of your point? And
yeah.
And that one person maybe is somebody we ought not to be looking at in the future, although we have to now. But it would be, so you're suggesting that maybe the group should, or the commission should say, we know we have to do this, 250 it is, I'm just making that up.
Yeah.
And then, but in the future, we recommend this position should be pulled and looked at through a salary and compensation study every 4 years or some such thing. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Got it.
And as Mike said, this structure is an odd duck for city managers' pay.
Yeah, that's what I found 4 years ago as well, in looking at the regional comparables to city manager. I mean, obviously, you're going to look at a county at the chief executive, the county administrative officer, the chief administrative officer.
Mhm.
But those comparable positions in our local jurisdictions that we compare the rest of our employees to for our market data, they're not structured this way. They are not set by ordinance. They're not set in this manner. They are generally negotiated either with the council or with the mayor, or both.
Anybody else just have general thoughts on that matter? You don't have to at this point, but I think it is something, because it's on the table. So we are going to have to sort of make a decision before we write a report.
And our time is ticking.
Sure is.
I am feeling the time pressure a lot.
Yeah, this we didn't get put on the commission didn't get rolling until a little bit late, I'm afraid.
Mhm.
So is Mr. Buckley around? Let's see. Guess not yet.
Let me text his chief of staff. Let me grab my
Okay.
There he
He's here.
is.
He's here.
How y'all doing?
Howdy.
Excellent.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Excellent, thank you.
Appreciate it. My name is Paul Rankin, chair of the group, and you can see on the screen everyone who's here: Sienna Scott, Stu Cohen, Barbara Chenault, obviously Trish, Faye Curry, also Brandon Wright. Picture's not on there. We are delighted that you're here with us today. Really, we are. Thank you for taking the time. We know how busy you are. We just had the pleasure of talking with Mr. Malinoff this past hour, who was very insightful and very forthcoming, and we really appreciated what he had to say. You are, of course, more than aware of our remit, which is to take a look at compensation, salaries, and perks, and so forth for alderpersons, city manager, and yourself going forward. So this is looking forward, so it's not your current pay, but it's for the one of the individual or individuals who will follow you in the future. So I think perhaps to get things started, as we did with Mr. Malinoff, perhaps if you could just take a few minutes and sort of talk a little bit about your role, your feelings about compensation and so forth, responsibilities, time spent, and so forth going forward. You have now almost 8 years behind you. It's been fantastic. So I turn it over to you now.
Well, I pulled over at a coffee shop because I wasn't sure if I was on the schedule first. So I'm here at 49 West, one of our locations. A lot of political action happens here. So first of all, I want to say thank you to all the people on this panel because, it is very important that we create a sustainable model in government, and we are entering a time now, not just on a national level where all people do or seem to do is just blame government and point the finger at government and almost resent government. You probably know that I've taken a couple of delegations to a couple of years ago to the Netherlands and then to Sweden last year. And when you go to these countries, they actually trust their governments and they are supportive of their governments. And clearly, there's different structures there and different. It's probably easier in some ways, but I'm here to be a cheerleader for government and say we live in one of the best cities in America, right? And that doesn't just happen by accident. That happens through leadership. And I can tell you, we have led through historic times. So as a mayor for 7 years now, we've led through 2 mass shootings, a pandemic, the greatest downturn in the economy since the Depression, a tornado, the worst flooding year in history, George Floyd, which was a huge challenge in many cities in the country, the Cummings killing, where a midshipman's mother was shot dead just in the back of a hotel through some tragic set of circumstances. We deal with many things. At the same time, we have to lead through these things and make sure people feel that the right people are in office to protect them, right? So throughout that, we've responded, and I think we led through COVID in what I consider one of the best responses in the country. It was interesting because at that time there wasn't a ton of communication between the state and the cities and the counties, but we came out of that stronger. We opened businesses during COVID. We see a lot of businesses shuttered in this street. We organized things like curbside chats when businesses couldn't operate indoors. We went to each of the precinct shopping districts and met the business owners on the curbside to talk about how we would navigate this, historic event that none of us ever thought we would have to. And we took that. With that, we got people to resources. We then moved forward with recovery zones in the different districts so that when the businesses opened, and we had to sort of find out when the governor was going to allow that on the news pretty much at the same time as the general public. So we had to, in our own way, be ahead of the curve and be ready for these things. And we opened the city up citywide with a kind of, citywide dining under the stars, we called it. And our businesses came back through that, and many of them came through stronger than ever. We didn't shut down many businesses. We also had to help everybody in the city. If you didn't fix COVID, you couldn't just fix COVID for one group of people. You had to fix COVID for everybody. So what I'm really proud of during that time is that we had people from, probably our undocumented population have enough trust in city government to come forward and sit down at a testing station with police officers all around and public safety people in the vicinity, and they trusted the government enough to come out and be tested, and then beyond that, trusted the government enough to get inoculated. These things happen because of the tone that you set in your position, and because of the trust that you build in the community. We've worked to build a One Annapolis. You all are very familiar that this city is the tale of two cities. and people expect people who think from the outside, and because you're on the inside, but people from the outside think if you live in Annapolis that you belong to a yacht club. Everybody belongs to a yacht club, or you belong to a historical society. You wear a bow tie, and that's all that happens. But we have extreme wealth right next door to extreme poverty, and everybody knows that your circumstances many times are not within your control, and that if you're unlucky enough to have been born into circumstances that are not as lucky as many of us on that call, that there are many challenges in your community. We're moving forward, and there's a lot of major capital projects, historical amount of capital projects that are happening on our watch. But I want to point one thing out to you. For all the issues that we hear about subsidized housing in the city and all the complaints that we get, we are moving towards what will eventually be nearly $500 million of investment into our subsidized housing communities, and breaking the mold and creating a new mixed income model. $300 million of investment will go into to Harbour House in Eastport Terrace. $56 million redevelopment, $53 million redevelopment is now underway at Morris Blum. We've got Robinwood. We have chosen the developer for that. That'll be a $50 million redevelopment. If any of you have been to Newtown, which is something that was our worst statistically neighborhood for crime when I came into office, it's been rebuilt to the Beverly Wilbourn Estates. It's a $26 million investment right next door. Woodside got around $20 million of reinvestment. A lot of that sort of stuff has happened while we do things on multiple fronts. The largest capital project on City Dock in the city's history be $100 million to build up City Dock and create a barrier against sea level rise. But today it's not just about sea level rise. Today it's about what is the next catastrophic weather event that is going to affect your city, and how are you going to be prepared for that? If the City Dock project had been built when Isabel hit, we would have kept the downtown businesses and the historic district safe. Of course, we have a lot more coastline to consider, but that is the heart of the city, the heartbeat of the city, the economic engine of the city. We are a city of 40,000 people that sits in a county of 600 and a state of 6 million in rough numbers. But we get 4 million tourists a year. We're the state capital, the county seat, and of course, we sit here in one of the most impressive historic cities in the country. And I defend it all the time. And I'm probably defensive in my last year about government, but everybody is upset with taxes and salaries. That sometimes is what you're reviewing. But our property taxes are main economic, the thing that really is a main financing of our budgets. Our property taxes are lower than Alexandria. They're lower than Bethesda. They're lower than Ellicott City. They're lower than Florida. This is our property tax. They're lower than Texas. Two quite red states. And I'd like to throw in a couple of good Republican ones. They're lower than Kennebunkport, and they're lower than Carmel. And so, and I'm proud of the way this city runs, and I stand on the shoulders of the people that governed before me. But I believe you get value for money. I believe so many people want to live in this city. We are so close to employment-rich centers. We have a quality of life that many people don't get in their cities. We have history. We have scale. We have fabric. And I say this about our directors and our directors' compensation. And just to round out here, because I've been talking a lot, I believe that our directors, and when you compare them to directors of the county where they have much bigger portfolios, those directors have directors below them. So there are many departments that have to manage help them manage their jobs. But our directors have to wear multiple hats, and our city manager, you have to be a survivor to be a city manager. You come in and out plenty of times with your position gets politicized a lot, and so you uproot your families or you uproot your life to move into communities, and your tenure might be short. So they deserve the compensation they get. We have excellent directors in place now. I believe it's taken a long time to do that. I saw Stuart's comments on the planning and zoning department. I believe that I've delivered on everything that I said, or I have everything in motion that I said I would do. Maybe not a Ferris wheel, but I'll have everything done. But the permitting process, I have not fixed. We have not fixed. And that's because we haven't had continuity of leadership. The two toughest positions in the city of Annapolis are the police chief, and I'm very proud of the community police model that we created ahead of George Floyd, and I think it's a model for the country. It's not perfect. We always need to improve. And then the city manager, the planning and zoning director position. We've been through 4 planning and zoning directors in 7 years. If you don't have continuity in leadership, you can't affect change. But we have an excellent director now who came from the private sector, who is really going to make a difference. But that takes time. It's like turning a ship. So we're on track to start to make that better, improve that. But I believe they're compensated well, and they should be compensated well. You've spoken to our city council, and I make jokes about structure. We have a 9 mini-mayor system. All of our councillors want to be the mayor, or they want to be executives, but they are, by code, legislators. It would be disastrous, I believe, if we had a council manager form of government. You just watch a city council meeting and see how challenging it is to get an agreement with that group. I like a city manager structure that we have, but I like to be the chief executive of the city, because a city manager doesn't get elected by the public. A city manager doesn't come in to sell a vision and cheerlead for the city. The face of the city is the mayor, and he sets the tone. And so, I think it's important probably that, and it's not going to affect me, but that his salary range, is around 100 or whatever. I would stand up for the council and say that the council need to get paid more, because they don't just work 25 hours. They are 24 hours a day on the job, even though it's supposed to be part-time. And so, and one thing that happens with such low compensation for a city council is that that we only get generally retirees that apply for these positions. So we very rarely get young voices, and I think it's important to have young voices in government, because we're building our cities for the future. And if you're retiring, or if you're old like me and you're on the way out, maybe you have different priorities. So I would, in summing up here, recommend some increase in the council's position, not particularly for the mayor. And thank you for that long-winded conversation there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate all your insight, actually. What we did with Mr. Malinoff, and we will do with you, is to go around to each of the commission members and let them ask you questions. A little Q&A here. So why don't I open it up? Stuart, you want to go ahead and get rolling here? You're on mute, Stu.
Thank you much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll start off with a real personal question. What does your spouse consider your salary? Does she consider it adequate?
This job is very tough on a family, and I don't think my wife would think that any amount of money is worth what you have to deal with. I have, and you've have to, all of us in government, you have to develop a skill set that lets things roll off your back, and you just understand that that's part of the job. But I would say my wife personalizes a lot of the stuff, and so that means that it doesn't really matter how much money. She would really love what you have to go through. I love my job. You know, it's the best thing I've ever done. I love my city, and so I feel really blessed or lucky to had this job for the time that I've had it, and I believe, you know, we're going to leave the city in a better way than we found it, and on the way to some amazing new things that wouldn't have happened if we weren't in office, wouldn't have been identified if we weren't in office. And you know, I think I'm proud of where we're heading as a city. I believe the next mayor, whoever that may be, has promised me they'll continue on the same track that we're on. But I would say that would sum up my wife's opinion.
Well, and my question was not entirely facetious. It goes back to the comment you made sort of towards the end in terms of attracting people for these positions. If the salary compensation is not adequate, then it really eliminates the possibility of anyone who doesn't have other sources of income to hold down those positions, including the mayor. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I think 100,000, I think in my view, that's a lot of money. You know, I mean, I know it's not, I mean, not a lot of money. I mean, I would say I've probably given up, my best earning years, what should be my best earning years to be a public servant, which I wouldn't change that. But I still think it's a decent amount. I think the disparity between the city manager and the mayor sometimes, I believe mayors work as hard as the city manager, and so it's sometimes a challenging. Some people make those comparisons, and I think you would have reviewed the city council. You probably would have got a sense that they feel the executive salaries are too high in this city. I don't agree with that as much. I think we have to keep them in check, of course, because we have to create a sustainable model, and it's not particularly the executive salaries that are pushing that over the top. We deal with union negotiations on a regular basis, and that pretty much guarantees that everything is going to go up 3 or 4 or whatever % a year, and at a certain point there'll be a tipping point where the taxes won't compensate, won't adequately cover that, and nobody really likes tax increases. So I don't think mayors come into the job for the money. I think they come into the job, I believe, for the love of their city.
Thanks, Sue. Further questions?
No, not right now.
Others? Sienna or Barbara? Sienna, you're on.
I just have one question.
Go ahead, Barb.
Since the city manager answers to the mayor, do you feel that their pay should be comparable along the same lines or no?
I mean, I honestly didn't even know. I mean, I didn't really think about the salary when I came into the job. I think any manager would want, the best city manager they can get. And so I think the class and comp study has given us the right range, and I think that, but it is the sticking point. I get a sense from talking to the council, a hostility to how high those salaries are. I think, you want to have the best person in the country be your city manager, and so that's not something I'm stuck on. And I would guess that most of the mayoral candidates don't really get stuck on that difference in salary. I just think, but I don't think it should be a token salary like you see in Newport or other areas, because And those are very different. Their mayors are relegated to the sideline. They're not the chief executive officer in those things. And I've spoken to those mayors, and I've watched the politicization of that position. And then there is a lot of power in the city manager as long as you can last. But you look at the turnover of city managers in Newport, I don't think that's the model we should chase. I think, we have a balance, there's lots of checks and balances in there for the mayor. So, you need to get 5 people to support your ideas. And, but I think that the salary range, for me, if I was running another 4 years, I'd want the salary range to be where it is, and it wouldn't really affect my opinion on where my salary is. But more like having the ability to get the best person in the country helps when there's money there. And remember, their tenures can be short. Like I said, you can uproot a family from the other side of the country to come into a job and maybe only last 4 years. In Newport, you could come in and last 2 years or a year because 5 councillors don't like you or something. Mike didn't talk about what his real job is, and his real job is to be a social worker for the council. He has to deal with their emotional problems sometimes, and that in itself is an amazing juggling act that I'm proud that he can manage the way he does, because there's a few egos to deal with.
Thanks, Stu. Any other follow-up questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. Faye, did you have your hand up, or are you good?
Oh, thank you, Mayor Gavin, for coming before us. My question is, what percentage of your job, if you can, is operational, taking care of the operations of what's going on in the city? I know 100% of it is people. So, and being, as you said, an ambassador for the city, but what percentage of your average day might be operational? Thank you.
I think, on the operational side, I trust, if you trust enough to hire a director, you should trust them to lead their departments. And so if you put good people in place, then, you should let them do their job. And I believe I don't micromanage the directors anyway. I speak to the directors a lot, probably a little more than a city manager would want to, but I learn from my directors because I know they know a lot more than me, and I want to learn about that sort of stuff. But I'll give you an example. When COVID hit, you were involved in operations. So we went from daily meetings during the COVID, led by our public Office of Emergency Management. Kevin Simmons took the leadership role. You needed a chain of command in that time. We met on a daily basis with the directors, city manager, and before Mike was in office. And then from there, we toned it down to weekly meetings. But throughout that, you were very hands-on. If an emergency happens, you're the one that's in front of the cameras when there's some horrific event, and so you interface with them a lot. I meet the police chief every week because policing is the biggest challenge in America, and especially in the climate that we were in before George Floyd. And because we were initiating a community policing model ahead of many places in the country, that communication with the police chief was really essential for me. So and then we're undertaking the largest capital project in the entire history of the city of Annapolis, on the city dock. But at the same time, we're innovating in many ways, pulling down federal grants for ferries and electric buses and bike lanes, and housing issues, getting the city familiar with other housing models. So, I interface with the directors when when we're trying to advance different initiatives. But operationally, that is what the nuts and bolts job of the city manager is. And I try not to interfere with that. And so I don't go to the directors' meetings on a monthly basis. I'm going to do probably a little bit more of that as I round out here, because I'm trying to push those big projects through and make sure that they're in motion or that they're finished before I leave at the end of this year. But operationally, I understand, you have to let the city manager do his job.
Kevin, when you put collectively everything that's happened in the city under your administration, there's no compensation that could have ever covered those one major, but those several majors. So while I have an opportunity, I know that you've not been adequately compensated, in my opinion. Based on that, I think you're a psychologist. You got to be a crisis manager, all those things. But is there anything that we can hear that would help the next mayor I know you could do a guide for them based on what you've been through, how to navigate this, and we don't know what the future holds, but there will be challenges. Is there anything you would like to offer for that next mayor in their compensation that may be beneficial? If you could have a Christmas wish list.
I keep saying this, and I believe, that there's some people that run for office that want to be mayor and want to have that title, or this, and I believe, maybe there's this, and there's other people that, really want to get stuff done, right? I think, I ran because I just want to see things happen in this city, and hopefully shape the city to be a place that I want to live in, that everybody wants to live in. And so I would say money is not the issue. It's not the issue for me, but it shouldn't be too far off the city manager, because there can be a divide can be created, and so I think that, sometimes the council, they say they want a city manager form of government, but I think they really want a council manager form of government. And with 8 councillors and with the dynamics of each of the councillors and their wards, it wouldn't be very productive to have them all be executives or try to, push through their agendas outside of the legislative process. And the city manager has to deal with that, and that's not easy, right? But like I said, I don't think Newport is the model in any way, or some of these other counties that have that. I think we have a good balance here, but the charter says that the mayor is the chief executive of the city, and I think you get elected on a vision. And so I hope the next mayor, has that vision and has the right city manager to push that through. But sorry, my wife would probably say I should ask for more money, but I don't think it's really about money. It's just more about passion or whatever.
Thank you for your honesty.
Thank
I
you.
don't have anything else. Oh.
Okay, thanks, Faye. Mr. Mayor, so you said a couple of things that are don't quite match. One is that for you the salary is pretty much okay. Obviously, your wife wants more. But our job is to look forward here and to try and make a recommendation that's both reasonable, financially reasonable for the city, and one that we believe is responsible and perhaps even helps attract quality individuals running for mayor. So you also had mentioned during your presentation that, perhaps that something moving up towards a compensation level moving up towards city manager might be better. So is it reasonable to say that, maybe there should be a bit of an increase? And if so, can you give us a sense of what that might be?
I mean, councillors should get about 40,000 a year, because a young person can live on $20 an hour. Now, it's an expensive city to live in, so realistically, no one can live on $40,000 in Annapolis. But that rent $20 an hour for a 40-hour week in general. And that would attract some younger people and on council. And I think it would be nice to just not have policy shaped generally by retirees, right? For the mayor, I am contradicting myself, saying it should be close to the city manager, but it shouldn't be, because I don't think any mayor is going to run on that platform. They're not going to say I'm running for the money. They're running because they want to lead the city. But I just think it should be six figures, as in 100, and not be below that. So that's what I would say. My view is, if it becomes like Newport and 30,000, 50,000 or whatever, just sort of a token thing, I think it diminishes your responsibility. It makes you look weak, and devalues really the work that you do, because we're all on the job 24 hours. For instance,
go ahead. I actually wanted to ask you that. Just about how many hours do you figure you put in a week on the job, more effectively on the job?
I mean, you could look at, I haven't taken a ton of vacation and even when you are on vacation, you're on your phone. And so we're in a 24-hour world. So it's hard not to be connected. So it's hard to turn it off. This weekend, for instance, we had a massive power outage in Robinwood, and I think 30, 40 residents lost their power in 20 degrees. So that message went out at 8:00 in the morning. We were we were dealing with BG&E and trying to get them back on the site, because they'd left the site because there was a shooting incident there, and they made a decision to leave a community, notify a hacker or not notify our police department, and the police were on the site. So, and then we through Saturday we dealt with trying to get the power back on. It got back on by 3, but there were several calls online. And then this Sunday I had a few events to go to. We lost Deputy Secretary just lost his wife tragically. So I'm at an event. So it's an 80-hour-a-week job, I'm sure. But I think that's what you have to do the job well.
I'm surprised you don't have circles under your eyes.
I do.
The one other question that I asked Mr. Malinoff, I will ask you as well, that had to do with one of our members had to do with staffing levels for council members. And so as we as a commission think a little bit about compensation for council members, we also have to think about some of the things that they're interested in, which are to the side of compensation, and that's staffing. I think Mr. Malinoff suggested that perhaps a little bit additional staff would be useful for council members. Do you think that is true as well, or not?
I think that the council are asking that, right? That they're asking for some staff help. They do have one person between the 8 of them, so I would agree if there could be some position that would serve a couple of councillors at the same time. And, you know, I've said that I agree that they should be compensated so we could attract some more people. But at the same time, you know, that not all of them have to work 40 hours. Some choose to work 40 hours. And I would stress again, and you can make your own assessment based on the meetings you had with the individual councils. We have a 9 mini mayor system. So many of those councillors want to be the mayor and want to be the executive, but they only got elected in their wards. They didn't get elected by the general population. If they wanted to be mayor, they could have run for mayor, you know, but they ran for their wards, and some of them are now running for mayor. So I agree with giving them some support. I agree with giving them better compensation so we can attract more talent. But at the same time, I wouldn't want that to lead to something that diminishes the mayor's power. And I don't mean power like I don't have some, you know, veto power or some way to override the will of the council, because we all have to agree on the votes, and we have all the right checks and balances with our city manager system. But, you know, the mayor should have, you know, should be on a different a different level to the council, because they are legislators, and we have, you know, you're elected as an executive, you know? And to get things done, you have to have that executive power. And so I want to help the council, but remembering that they are part-time, you know.
Thank you very much for those comments. Are there other members of the commission who have questions or would like to ask the mayor a question while we have him? Yes, Sienna.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Thank you. I was very, very impressed with the list that you gave us when you initially spoke to us. Things that I frankly forgot about, some of the major things that have happened in the city. And I do thank you for everything that you do every day. One of the questions that we heard from the older persons is the small perks that come with this position. Is there anything that you would recommend that that we should consider, as that we haven't considered, or that isn't available to you now?
I think, you know, the parking privileges are good. I think they should get a small stipend for, you know, meetings that, you know, that they have in coffee shops. And, you know, my wife will say I spend more of my own money in meetings and lunch meetings and things like that than you sometimes get. So I think some increase in their stipend would go a long way. I think they are looking for some more office space. But we have a small shared office that they use, and I would say that I don't see them in that space that often. Maybe maybe that could be enhanced, but I don't know if they would do them. So 3 young councillors have jobs. They don't have the ability to be in that space during the daytime very often. So it might not be needed, but some of them have expressed it would be better to have a more significant place. I do like keeping the city manager and the council and the mayor all kind of together, because I think, you know, we are a team, and generally, you know, we agree. We have to agree on most things, and I think, you know, keeping us in the same area and making us recognize, you know, that we work for the people, and that we have to make sure that people know we're all pulling in the same direction. So I like keeping us in the same area. But other than that, I can't really think of any immediate things that would help the council. I mean, you know, you're going to make some recommendations now, Sienna, and it's an election year, and not many of the council are going to vote to support any increase because it's an election year. So it's an interesting exercise here because of that fact that, you know, it's at the end of our terms when a new incoming group is coming in. I think there should be some term limits. Sorry, this is not even the question you asked. I think there should be some kind of term limits on the council as well, because I think that, you know, it's good for the wards to have some sort of rotation, maybe not 2 terms, but 3 or 4 or something like that, I think would be healthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sienna, do you have follow-up?
No, that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So let's, we're getting close to the end of our time now. Let's go back through. Is there anyone else on the commission that has a question for Mayor Buckley? Sue? No? Barbara? No? Faye? Sienna? Nor do I. I think I just I do have one real quick. As a perk, one of the things I think one of the council members that we interviewed said they spend a huge amount of time on the phone, and none of that is picked up. You know, the cell phone, and it sounded as we were chatting fairly reasonable. You know, that the city might pick up half a cell phone or something like that. Does that strike you as reasonable, or is that not reasonable in your view?
I actually thought we did pick that up. So absolutely, yeah. I mean, we all conduct all of our business on our phones these days, and you know, even throughout a council meeting such as last night, you can see each of the councillors looking at their phone and peppering us with questions from their constituents. So I definitely think that that should be part of the package. So that, thank you for bringing that up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? All right, then. Well, on behalf of the entire commission, Mr. Mayor, I think several of the questioners told you that, you know, your service to the city has been extraordinary, exemplary. We really appreciate everything you have done and are doing. Hope the remainder of your term is super successful, and we thank you very, very much for taking time to meet with us today.
I want to thank you, because I know it's all volunteers, so we're lucky to have constituents and people that love the city like you do. This is going to be an exciting year. You know, the one thing I learned in government is the wheels of government move slow, and it's taken me a long time to start to move some of these ideas forward. But I'm excited about 2025 because a lot of things will come out of the ground and be finished, or at least there'll be a shovel in the ground. And they'll, you know, be awarded and be in motion. So I know that they might not get finished in my term, but I know they'll get finished in the next mayor's term, and hopefully I'll get an invite to the ribbon cutting.
I suspect you will. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for your time.
We appreciate you all. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Gavin.
Bye-bye. So if everyone, the commissioners, would just stick around for a minute, that would be great. So it's 10:17. I unfortunately have a hard stop today at 10:25. I have to actually I have to work. But we should maybe chat for a couple of minutes.
Paul?
Yes, sir.
I have something I really want to bring up while we're all on the phone. So
please go away. Go away.
It's not a follow-up to the 2 conversations we just had, but
fire away, Stu.
As we discussed at the last meeting, I did get in touch with Lisa Rodvian. One of the biggest shocks I had was that the current salary for the county council is $44,000 or so. She says that $30,000. She's in her second term. Even at the start of her second term, it was more around $40,000. So, Tricia, can we confirm?
I will send you, I will get that information and send that to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
she says she knows like the city council or alder people that she works at least 40 hours a week, but she does have a full-time legislative aide. All the 7 alder council members have full-time legislative aides that deal. Each one does slightly different work, but they all do constituent services that our city alder people have no one to do for them. And she believes that the current salary is well, we've all discussed this any number of times with other people. It's a disincentive to getting a wide range of individuals to participate and run for office. She thinks that the alder persons should, what she told me very specifically, she said to communicate to the commission, is she believes alderpersons should get at least double, if not triple, their current figure of salary. So it was and she's very much convinced that even though she has a much larger constituent that she has to serve, she has a full-time legislative aide, so that she sees that city alderpersons basically work just as hard as she does, which is at least 40 hours a week. So I just wanted to get that in while we're all together.
Thanks, Stu. Anybody have a question for Stu on that, or any comments?
That's very insightful. So
Yeah.
thank you for meeting with her.
Thank you. I wanted to add, I was also able to talk to Alderman Gay.
Oh, good.
So I have his input, and the numbers that he gave pretty much align with Lisa Robian's as his recommendation. And I can go through that in more detail when we have time to do that.
Great. Thank you, by the way, Sienna. Other comments from anyone today? So I just wanted to, I thought those.
Just wanted to offer that
Oh, go ahead.
talked to Brandon about whether he was able to talk to Alderwoman O'Neill.
I haven't heard.
I think is Brandon still with us?
No.
No.
Okay.
Left.
Would you like me to reach back out to him and ask him if he's been able
Yeah.
to? He could
I
provide.
didn't get that email. And the only thing before we let go real quickly, it was Sienna, wasn't it you who recommended Paul for the chairperson? So I wanted the minutes amended
Oh, for the minutes.
to reflect
Okay.
that. So I sent that in an email because it said that I did. But other than that, I think we can adjourn so you can, if that's okay with you.
Well, why don't we go? No, I just wanted. Why don't we go ahead and probably should have done that at the very beginning. And that is, so do we, with the change in naming Sienna as the person who recommended me for the position, if those minutes are amended to reflect that, does everyone accept the minutes as presented?
Yes.
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 I want to offer to you, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go
I
ahead.
wanted to offer to you that I have since gotten guidelines what the minutes should include. So if you're okay with that, I'd like to work directly with Paul to review the minutes to see if we're designed that way, if the fact how we're reporting this is in alignment with those guidelines. And then you may get an amended version, for your review.
Yeah, we're probably going to have to redo each. They have this funky little.
Yeah,
little
it's supposed
template
to be
that we're
more
supposed to-
general. Yeah, more general
So-
than instead of capturing specifically
So
all.
we'll just redo those. Tricia, you and I will we'll redo them and send them back out to everybody. But at the worst, it's just going to be a compressed set of minutes as opposed to losing anything factual.
And then I'd like to offer one more thing, which is more of a conflict has arisen for me with Monday. I wanted to see if the members are able to meet in the afternoon on Monday. I have an appeal I need to be available for. That should be carrying me until 1:30 p.m. at the latest. So I'm wondering what you look like at perhaps 2 or later.
So we're meeting this Friday at 8:30, right? On the
Correct, that's
3rd.
fine.
And then, so
I think it's the
Monday,
3rd.
Monday, you're proposing, let's just say 2 o'clock on
Yeah,
Monday?
would that work?
I'm not
Works.
available.
You're
Works
not
for me.
available?
I'm available, but let me suggest we may need like a 2 or 3 hour meeting on the 3rd if we're going to do a report on the 4th.
Yeah, because we're just about done here.
Do we want to extend Friday's time? Do we want to ask for more time on Friday?
Yeah, what do you all think about that? Maybe put 2 hours in on Friday?
Yes.
Everybody's nodding their heads. I'm looking.
Yes.
Give me 1 second. I'm trying to pull my schedule for the week. Sorry.
Okay, Barb.
While you're doing that, Trish, remind me, what did Mike say the city budget is?
150 million approximately. Yeah.
A separate capital budget,
And then
right?
the capital budget's 300 plus.
And the budget is online. All of that's available online. You go to government tab, go to finance, and then the operating budget and the CPI budget are separate.
And salaries, Tricia, we would be pulling, capital budget's completely set aside. That's hard stuff, right? So we'd be pulling, as it were, from the 150, 160 million budget. Okay. Barbara?
I can extend on Friday.
Okay, so the proposal, I apologize for rushing here.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
No, it's all right. So we're looking at an 8:30 start time, so 8:30 to 10:30 on Friday morning, the 31st.
Mhm.
Yep.
And so I just want to leave this final thought. That's why I was asking what the budget is. Just this final thought for everyone to think through is if we increase the salaries of the mayor and the 8 council aldermen by $20,000, that's just a ballpark figure. That's $180,000. We've not talk about the city manager yet at this point, but that's a drop in the bucket in terms of thinking about fiscal responsibility. It's not going to move the needle in terms of the city budget. Do they have the political will to come up with to approve something like that? That's a whole different question. But I don't think what we're going to recommend, the sense I have, is going to affect the budget in any significant manner. That's the thought I wanted to leave people with.
Thank you, Stu. Appreciate that. And I apologize that I have to push myself off, but thank you all, as usual, for your great work. And we will see you on Friday at 8:30 a.m.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Communicate
Bye,
by
all.
email otherwise.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.